Dr. Sarah Lee looked out the window of the spaceship. The new planet, XR-27, was coming closer. It was her first big space mission. She felt excited and a bit scared. "Ready for landing, Dr. Lee?" Captain Jones asked. Sarah nodded. "Yes, sir. I can't wait to see what's down there." The ship landed with a soft thud. Sarah put on her spacesuit. She checked it twice. Safety first, she thought. Outside, the air was thin. The sky looked orange. 2 small moons hung in the sky. Sarah walked slowly, looking at everything. "Over here," shouted Dr. Chen, Sarah's teammate. "I found something weird." Sarah hurried over. On the ground was a strange glowing rock. It was blue and seemed to move a little. "What is it?" asked Dr. Chen. Sarah shook her head. "I don't know, but it's amazing." She carefully put the rock in a sample box. They kept looking around. Sarah found more glowing rocks. Some were blue, some were green. All of them moved a bit. Back on the ship, Sarah couldn't wait to study the rocks. She put one under a microscope. What she saw made her gasp. The rock wasn't a rock at all. It was alive. Tiny creatures moved inside it. They looked like nothing she had ever seen before. "Captain, Dr. Chen, come look at this," Sarah called out. They came running. Sarah showed them what she found. Captain Jones frowned. "Are you sure, Dr. Lee? This could be big news." Sarah nodded. "I'm sure. These are alien life forms, and they're not simple ones. They seem smart." Dr. Chen looked worried. "We should tell Earth right away." But when they tried to call Earth, something was wrong. The ship's computer was acting strange. It kept showing weird symbols. "The aliens must be affecting our systems," Sarah said. "We need to be careful." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the aliens. What if they were dangerous? What if bringing them to the ship was a bad idea? She got up and went to the lab. The sample boxes were glowing brighter now. Sarah put on gloves and opened one box. Suddenly, the alien rock jumped out. It started to grow bigger. Sarah backed away, scared. The rock kept growing. It formed a shape that looked almost human. 2 bright eyes opened and looked at Sarah. Sarah's heart was beating fast. She wanted to run, but she couldn't move. The alien reached out a hand-like thing towards her. Just then, the ship's alarm went off. Red lights flashed everywhere. Sarah heard people running. Captain Jones burst into the lab. He saw the alien and pulled out his gun. "Dr. Lee, get away from that thing." The alien made a high-pitched sound. All the sample boxes started shaking. More aliens were coming out. "We need to leave now," Sarah shouted. She grabbed her research notes and ran out with the captain. They sealed the lab door, but they could hear the aliens inside. The whole ship was shaking now. "Everyone to the escape pods," Captain Jones ordered over the speaker. As they ran, Sarah felt sad and excited at the same time. She had found alien life, but now they were in danger. What would happen next? Would Earth believe them? Sarah knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. Dr. Sarah Lee stood nervously in front of the big screen. The room was full of important people. They all looked at her with doubt in their eyes. "Please, you have to believe me," Sarah said. "The aliens on XR-27 are real, and they're dangerous." Dr. Wilson, her boss, shook his head. "Dr. Lee, we've gone over this. Your story is too wild to be true." Sarah felt her face get hot. She had been trying for weeks to make them listen. No one believed her about the shape-changing aliens. Just then, a man in a dark suit stood up. "I think we should check it out," he said. Everyone looked surprised. The man was from the government. His name was Agent Johnson. "Really?" Sarah asked, feeling hopeful. Agent Johnson nodded. "If Dr. Lee is right, we need to know. If she's wrong, well, at least we'll be sure." 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself back on a spaceship. This time, it was bigger. There were scientists, soldiers, and government agents on board. As they got closer to XR-27, Sarah felt scared and excited. She looked out the window at the orange planet below. "Are you ready, Dr. Lee?" Agent Johnson asked. Sarah took a deep breath. Yes, I think so. The ship landed in the same spot as before. Everyone put on their spacesuits. Sarah led the way to where she had first seen the alien rocks. There, she pointed. On the ground were glowing blue and green rocks. They seemed to move slightly. Dr. Wilson bent down to look closer. Incredible, he whispered. Suddenly, the rocks started to change. They grew bigger and took on strange shapes. The soldiers raised their guns. Wait, Sarah shouted. Don't shoot. We don't know what they'll do. The rocks kept changing. Soon, they looked almost human, but their skin glowed and they had no mouths. One of the aliens stepped forward. It raised a hand as if saying hello. Agent Johnson moved closer. Amazing, he said. Dr. Lee, you were right. He reached out to touch the alien. Sarah felt worried. Be careful, she said. The alien touched Agent Johnson's glove. For a moment, nothing happened. Then there was a loud hiss. Agent Johnson screamed. His glove was melting. The alien's touch was like acid. Help him, Sarah yelled. 2 soldiers ran to pull Agent Johnson back. More aliens came forward. Their eyes turned red. They didn't look friendly anymore. Everyone, back to the ship, the team leader shouted. But the aliens were fast. They surrounded the team. Some soldiers started shooting. The aliens fell back, but only for a second. Sarah saw a small gap between the aliens. This way, she yelled, pointing. The team ran. Aliens chased them, making weird, high-pitched noises. Sarah's heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. They reached the ship, but 3 team members were missing. The captain wanted to wait. We can't, Sarah said. If we stay, we'll all die. As the ship took off, Sarah saw the missing people. The aliens had caught them. She felt terrible leaving them behind. In space, everyone was quiet. They were sad and scared. I'm sorry, Sarah said. I didn't know they would be like this. Agent Johnson, his hand bandaged, shook his head. It's not your fault, Dr. Lee. We had to know. As they flew back to Earth, Sarah worried. The aliens knew about them now. Would they follow? Were they planning to attack? She looked at her notes. There had to be a way to stop them. Sarah knew she had to find it, or Earth might be in big trouble. The real challenge was just beginning. The spaceship raced through the dark sky, leaving the alien planet far behind. Inside, Dr. Sarah Lee sat with her head in her hands. She couldn't believe how badly things had gone. It's all my fault, she whispered. Agent Johnson, his hand still hurting from the alien's touch, sat next to her. No, Dr. Lee, you did the right thing by telling us about the aliens. Sarah looked up at him. But now 3 of our team are gone, and the aliens might come after us. The ship's captain walked in. His face was serious. We need to warn Earth, he said. These aliens are dangerous. Sarah nodded. She stood up, trying to be brave. I'll help in any way I can. For the next few days, as they flew back to Earth, Sarah worked hard. She wrote down everything she knew about the aliens. How they could change shape, how their touch could melt things, and how fast they were. Finally, Earth came into view. It looked so peaceful from space. Sarah worried about what might happen if the aliens came near. As soon as they landed, Sarah and the team were taken to a big, secret building. Important people from the government were waiting for them. Tell us everything, said a woman in a dark suit. Sarah took a deep breath and started talking. She told them about finding the alien rocks, how they changed shape, and how they attacked the team. When she finished, the room was quiet. Sarah could see worry on everyone's faces. We need to get ready, Agent Johnson said. The aliens might come to Earth. But one man shook his head. This sounds like a bad movie. Do you really expect us to believe this? Sarah felt angry. It's all true. We have videos. We have samples. Why won't you believe us? The man laughed. Videos can be faked, and your samples don't look alien to me. Sarah couldn't believe it. Even after everything, some people still didn't believe her. Just then, a loud alarm went off. Red lights started flashing. A soldier ran into the room. "Sir, we've spotted something strange entering Earth's atmosphere." Everyone ran to look at a big screen on the wall. There was a glowing object flying towards Earth. It looked just like the alien rocks Sarah had seen. "It's them," Sarah whispered. "They followed us." The room burst into action. People were shouting orders, making phone calls, and running around. Sarah turned to Agent Johnson. "What do we do now?" He looked worried. "We get ready to fight." For the next few hours, Sarah worked with the team to prepare. She told them everything she knew about how to fight the aliens. "Their touch is dangerous," she warned. "Don't let them get close." As night fell, Sarah looked out the window. The city below looked normal. People were going about their lives, not knowing the danger that was coming. Sarah felt scared, but also determined. She had brought this danger to Earth, even if by accident. Now she had to help stop it. "I won't let them hurt anyone else," she said to herself. Just then, Agent Johnson walked up. "Dr. Lee, we need you. We're making a plan to stop the aliens." Sarah nodded and followed him. As she walked, she thought about how much had changed in just a few days. She had wanted to discover new life. Instead, she had found a new enemy. But Sarah knew one thing for sure. She would do whatever it took to protect Earth. The real fight was just beginning. The night sky over New York City lit up with strange, blue flashes. Dr. Sarah Lee stood on the roof of a tall building, watching with fear in her eyes. "It's starting," she said quietly. Next to her, Agent Johnson nodded. "We knew this was coming. Are you ready?" Sarah took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." Suddenly, a loud boom shook the building. In the distance, Sarah saw a glowing object crash into Central Park. People on the streets below started screaming and running. "We need to move now," Agent Johnson shouted. He spoke into his radio. "All teams go." Sarah followed him down to a waiting helicopter. As they flew towards Central Park, she saw more glowing objects falling from the sky. The alien invasion had begun. The helicopter landed near the crash site. Sarah put on a special suit that the scientists had made based on her research. It was supposed to protect her from the aliens' acid touch. "Remember, don't let them touch you," Sarah warned the soldiers around her. "And be ready for anything. They can change shape." As they approached the crash site, Sarah saw a familiar sight. The glowing blue rocks were there, but they were much bigger now. Suddenly, the rocks started to move and grow. "Get back," Sarah yelled. The rocks transformed into tall, humanoid shapes. Their skin glowed, and their eyes were bright red. One of the aliens looked right at Sarah and made a horrible screeching noise. The soldiers opened fire, but the bullets seemed to bounce off the aliens. The creatures moved fast, running towards the team. "Fall back," Agent Johnson ordered. "Dr. Lee, any ideas?" Sarah's mind raced. She remembered something from her research. "The cold," she shouted. "They don't like the cold." Agent Johnson nodded and spoke into his radio. Soon, helicopters appeared overhead, dropping huge tanks of liquid nitrogen. "Everyone, get clear," Sarah yelled. The tanks exploded, covering the area in freezing mist. The aliens screeched and slowed down, their glowing skin turning dull. For a moment, Sarah thought they had won. But then she saw more glowing objects falling from the sky all over the city. This is just the beginning, she realized. Over the next few hours, Sarah and the team fought off alien attacks across New York. They used the liquid nitrogen trick, but they were running out fast. As the sun began to rise, Sarah looked out over the city. Parts of it were on fire, and she could hear fighting in the distance. "We can't keep this up forever," Agent Johnson said, looking tired. Sarah nodded. "We need a better plan, something to stop them all at once." Just then, Sarah's phone beeped. It was a message from Dr. Wilson, her old boss. "Sarah, I think I found something in your old research. Come to the lab right away." Sarah showed the message to Agent Johnson. "This might be important," she said. He nodded. "Go. We'll hold them off as long as we can." As Sarah was leaving, she saw a family hiding in a destroyed building. A little girl looked at her with scared eyes. Sarah felt a wave of guilt. She had brought this danger to Earth, but looking at that little girl, she knew she had to fix it. "I'll make this right," Sarah promised quietly. She got into a car and sped towards the lab, hoping Dr. Wilson had found something useful. As she drove, she saw more aliens in the streets. The invasion was spreading fast. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tightly. She didn't know what Dr. Wilson had found, but she knew one thing for sure. This was Earth's last chance. If they couldn't stop the aliens soon, everything would be lost. The fate of the world now rested on what she would find at the lab. Sarah just hoped it would be enough. Dr. Sarah Lee raced through the destroyed streets of New York. Her car swerved around abandoned vehicles and debris. In the distance, she could hear explosions and alien screeches. Finally, she reached the lab. Dr. Wilson was waiting for her at the door. "Hurry," he shouted. "I've found something big." Inside, Dr. Wilson showed Sarah his discovery. On a computer screen was a complex diagram of the aliens' DNA. "Look here," he pointed. "Their genetic structure is unlike anything on Earth, but it has a weakness." Sarah leaned in closer. Her eyes widened as she understood what she was seeing. "Of course," she exclaimed. "Their ability to change shape. It's also their biggest weakness." Dr. Wilson nodded excitedly. "Exactly. If we can disrupt this part of their DNA, they won't be able to change form. They'll be stuck." Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. And if they can't change, they can't adapt to our weapons. For the next few hours, Sarah and Dr. Wilson worked nonstop. They developed a special chemical that could target the aliens' unique DNA. Just as they finished, Sarah's phone rang. It was Agent Johnson. "Dr. Lee, we're losing ground fast," he said, his voice tense. "Please tell me you have something." "We do," Sarah replied, "but we need to get it into the air. It has to reach all the aliens at once." Agent Johnson was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have an idea. Meet me at the airport in 30 minutes. Sarah and Dr. Wilson packed their new weapon and raced to the airport. When they arrived, they saw a large military plane waiting. Agent Johnson greeted them. "We're going to load your chemical into this plane," he explained. "Then we'll fly over the city and release it into the air." As they loaded the plane, Sarah saw more alien ships arriving. The sky was filled with glowing objects. "We have to hurry," she urged. Soon, they were in the air. Sarah looked out the window at the city below. Fires burned everywhere. Aliens roamed the streets, but she could also see pockets of human resistance fighting back. "We're approaching the drop zone," the pilot announced. Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. Everything depended on this moment. "Now," Agent Johnson ordered. The plane released the chemical into the air. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then Sarah heard a strange noise. Looking down, she saw the aliens start to shake. Their glowing bodies flickered and twisted. Suddenly, they all froze in place. "It's working," Sarah shouted. "They can't change shape anymore." On the ground, the human fighters realized what was happening. They charged forward, attacking the now vulnerable aliens. The tide of the battle began to turn. Without their shape-changing ability, the aliens couldn't defend themselves as well. Human weapons that were once useless now worked perfectly. As the plane circled the city, Sarah saw more and more areas being reclaimed by humans. The aliens were retreating. "We did it," Dr. Wilson said, smiling for the first time in days. But Sarah knew it wasn't over yet. "This is just New York," she said. "We need to do this all over the world." Agent Johnson nodded. "I've already contacted other countries. They're preparing to do the same thing in their cities." As they flew back to the airport, Sarah felt a mix of emotions. She was happy they had found a way to fight back, but she also felt sad about all the destruction and loss of life. Landing at the airport, Sarah saw crowds of people cheering. News of their success had spread fast. A little girl ran up to Sarah. "Are the scary aliens going away now?" she asked. Sarah knelt down and smiled at the girl. "Yes, they are. We're going to be okay." As she stood up, Sarah knew there was still a lot of work to do. The aliens might be weakened, but they weren't gone yet, and the world had a lot of rebuilding to do. But for the first time since the invasion began, Sarah felt hope. Humans had found a way to fight back, and she was determined to see this through to the end. 2 weeks had passed since the humans' first big win against the aliens. Dr. Sarah Lee stood in a room full of world leaders and top scientists. Everyone looked tired but determined. "The chemical weapon has worked well," Sarah said, pointing to a map. "We've pushed the aliens back in many cities, but they're still fighting hard." Agent Johnson nodded. "And we're running out of the chemical. We need a new plan." Sarah took a deep breath. "I think I have one, but it's very risky." The room went quiet. All eyes were on Sarah. "We know the aliens came here in a big ship," she began. "It's hiding on the dark side of the moon. If we can get there and destroy it, the aliens on Earth will be cut off. They'll have no way to get help or supplies." One of the leaders spoke up. "But how can we get to the moon? All our space programs were destroyed in the first attacks." Sarah nodded. "That's the risky part. We need to capture an alien ship and use it to fly to the moon." The room erupted in shocked voices. It seemed impossible. Agent Johnson raised his hand for quiet. "Dr. Lee, how do you propose we do this?" Sarah walked to a big screen and pulled up some diagrams. "I've been studying the alien ships we've shot down. I think I can fly one, but first we need to catch one that's not damaged." She explained her plan. They would set a trap, using the last of their chemical weapon to force an alien ship to land. Then a small team would sneak aboard and take control. "Once we have the ship," Sarah continued, "we'll fly to the moon and plant bombs on the alien mothership. We'll set them to explode after we leave." The room was silent as everyone thought about the plan. It was dangerous, but it might work. Finally, the president stood up. "It's risky, but it's the best chance we have. Dr. Lee, you have my approval. What do you need?" Sarah felt a mix of fear and excitement. "I need a small team of the best soldiers and all the bombs we can carry." For the next few days, Sarah and her team prepared. They practiced fighting in tight spaces and memorized everything they knew about alien technology. On the day of the mission, Sarah stood with her team at the trap site. They had spread the last of the chemical weapon over a wide area. "Remember," Sarah said to her team, "once we're on that ship, there's no turning back. We either succeed or—" She didn't need to finish. Everyone knew the stakes. Suddenly, they heard the high-pitched whine of an alien ship. It was coming right for them. "Get ready," Sarah shouted. The ship flew into the chemical cloud. It started to shake and lose control. Slowly, it descended and landed roughly in front of them. "Now," Sarah yelled. The team rushed forward. They fought their way inside the ship, using their special weapons to take down the aliens quickly. Sarah ran to the control room. It was strange and complex, but she recognized some parts from her studies. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. With shaking hands, she started the ship. It hummed to life, lifting off the ground. As they flew towards the moon, Sarah thought about everything that had led to this moment. Her discovery of the aliens, the invasion, and now this desperate mission. Looking back at Earth, she saw the beautiful blue planet, parts of it still glowing from alien attacks. "We have to succeed," she said, "for everyone back home." The alien mothership came into view. It was massive, like a city floating in space. Sarah took a deep breath. "This is it, team. Let's finish this." As they flew towards the mothership, Sarah knew this was the riskiest thing she'd ever done, but it was their last hope to save Earth. Whatever happened next would decide the fate of humanity.